Welcome to another live stream. It's our Monday. Human resources management. Good afternoon. Ethics class. Waiting for time. Bait lang ako. So, good afternoon. Kamusta? Good afternoon. I hope nakapag-lunch na kayo, ha? Tapos na ba kayong mag-lunch? Tapos na daw. Ayos. Tapos na mag-lunch. Today is 21. Okay, may I know kung nandito si Wayne Dieter? Present. Patricia? Hazel Ann? Ralph Aaron? Nina Gabriel? Alfonso Miguel? Natalie Marie? Stephanie? Carl Steven? And then Carl Steven, where are you? Present. Present ka. Ikaw ba si Carl? Josiah Ruiz. Okay, present. J.Ann Rose. Angelo. Angelo, nandyan. Kakapasok lang. Eldio Angelo. Nandyan. Rovic. Maria Catherine. Present. Lara. Present. Nell Francis Isaac. Present. Tawagin natin ulit yung iba mamaya after the class. Ralph Aaron, nandiyan na. Nandiyan na. Nina Gabriel or Nina. Alfonso Miguel. Natalie Marie. Rovic. So, may hindi natawag. May hindi natawag. Miguel Antonio. Angelo Mateo, natawag na natin yan. Miguel Antonio. Note ko lang ha, baka bagong enroll lang ito si Miguel. Guys, so our discussion for this afternoon will be just a continuation on what we have started in our last synchronous meeting, our discussion on pre-Socratic philosophers, and then we will just bridge the development of the historical development of philosophical thought from the pre-Socratics, and then of course Plato and Socrates, and then before we go to Aristotle. So hopefully by next week we can start a discussion on Aristotle already, and then maybe we can have a discussion already on the ethics, on the proper discussion on our subject matter, which is ethics. So tingnan natin yung transition from pre-Socratics and then to the philosophy of Plato and then to Aristotle. But before we start, may I know if there are some questions that you'd like to ask concerning our previous discussion? May mga gusto niyo bang i-clarify doon? May mga nalito kayo sa previous discussions? May mga concerns ba? And wala naman. So for to start today's discussion, I want to focus or to emphasize two pre-Socratic philosophers, namely Parmenides and Heraclitus. So Parmenides and Heraclitus they are the philosophers who were known for introducing to us the concept of being and becoming. These two terms are very important in philosophy and they can be mentioned many times in your studies of philosophy. So what is being and becoming, and how are they related to the ideas, thoughts, the philosophy of Parmenides and Heraclitus? So I hope mayroon na sa inyong familiar no with the philosophies of Parmenides and Heraclitus. Meron ba? Anyone would like to share uh, some information about Parmenides and Heraclitus? May alam kayo kay Parmenides? Sino si Parmenides? Sino si Heraclitus? So, in philosophy, uh, Parmenides is known for being the proponent of the concept of permanence. While on the other hand, Heraclitus was known for being the proponent of the notion of change, permanence and change. So, Parmenides, on one hand, was known for his statement, no? And according to him, being is one. So what does he meant? What does Parmenides meant by the word or the words being is one? Yeah, so it was Parmenides actually who introduced this notion of being. What is being? After Heraclitus, who introduced also the concept of becoming, which represents the notion of change. No? Becoming refers to change. So Heraclitus was very much known for the saying, you cannot step twice on the same river. Is there anyone who could explain to us what does Heraclitus meant by the statement, you cannot step twice on the same river? What does he meant by that? Yes, yes, Carl Steven. Would you want to elaborate further? Mm, daanan, dumadaan siya sa, daanan, dumadaan siya sa, mm, okay, dito, sahin din natin. Uh, Thank you, Carl, no, for sharing your thoughts. Sabi naman ni Nell Francis, the world will constantly change daw po. And no second or no two situations are the same. Ayan, so sorry for that interruption. Okay, so do you hear me? Oh, so tama no yung sinabi ni Carl at ni Nell no that there's only one reality that is the reality of change no. The way that Heraclitus um, describe reality is reality as becoming. or a constant change. So totoo naman, when you look at your surroundings, uh, every reality or any object for that matter is always subject to change. So even human beings, tayo din, nagbabago tayo, no? At some point in our life, diba, from childhood, from from infancy stage, tapos to early childhood, and then we become teenagers, then young adults, ganyan. So there is a development, no? We may be different the next day, no? Iba na ako ngayon, no? So, hindi na ako yung dati mong kakilala, no? So, in one person, uh, maaring ikaw pa rin, ikaw pa rin yung tao behind the name, no? Pero iba na yung personality mo compared to before. Maaring nag-mature ka na, ganun. Then, objects in our surroundings, no? Like trees, no? Ganun din. We began with, for example, plants. We begin with seedling, and then in other words, there is growth and development that you can experience in reality, no? There is always change, no? There is decay, there is death, there is always change. Yan. So yan ang si Heraclitus ang proponent ng philosophy of becoming or the notion of change. But Heraclitus contemporary would not agree to the notion of change. That's why he create his own concept, the concept of permanence. For Parmenides, sabi naman niya, being is one. Being is one. And another popular saying of Parmenides is that whatever is. Whatever is not. So what does he meant by that? Whatever is. And whatever is not. So, ito namang si Parmenides, siya naman yung proponent ng concept na being in philosophy, no? What does he meant by being or beings, no? For Parmenides, any object that is existing or anything that exists is called being. So being refers to the concept of existence, no? So like human being, you existence. But oftentimes the when you refer to the totality of beings in philosophy, it is written with a capital letter B, being, referring to the totality of existence. Everything that exists is called being with capital B. And so the word being comes from the verb to be, or what is or what exists, being. And so dahil why Parmenides disagrees with Heraclitus' notion of change? Because in the mind of Parmenides, he has a different understanding of change. Kasi sa kanya, he want what he understand as change is referring to a total annihilation of being or total annihilation of objects. For example, this book, for example, uh, change would occur to this book if this book would suddenly disappear all at once without any trace. Yan ang ibig sabihin niya ng total annihilation. Yung biglang mawala siya, no? Mag-disappear from being or from something into nothing. Yan yung understanding ni Parmenides ng change, which is impossible to happen. Kaya ang sinasabi niya, change is impossible because you cannot make this book disappear all at once. Pwede mong sabihin, pwede naman yung sunugin para mawala siya. But when you burn this book, it will only transform into a different reality. Magbagong anyo lang siya, no? It will only transform into ashes. But the substance is still there, no? The substance remains. Nandun yung matter niya, no? So, walang change na nangyari but only a transformation according to Parmenides, a transformation into a new reality. Walang total annihilation na nangyari. That's why Parmenides disagree with Heraclitus. So what are the implications of this thought, no, of Parmenides? It implies that it implies that there is no end and there is also no creation. Kasi everything is permanence, no? Constant. So from what exists is always there. Being. There is no beginning, there is no end. In short, there is no moment of creation because it always there. It always existed. No? It is always there. Yan ang implication sa philosophy ni Parmenides. Yan. So, that's why being is one because you cannot make being disappear, no? It's impossible that from nothing, it's hard to imagine that from nothing, being suddenly exist or suddenly appear out of nothing. It's impossible, no? And it's impossible also for being to suddenly become nothing. So what exists is always there, no? It's always existing. Being is permanent. Yan ang argument ni Parmenides. So they have a very contradictory concept, no? Notion, magka-oppose. The philosophy of Parmenides and Heraclitus are very much opposite. Then later on we find in Plato, no? Plato, another Greek philosopher who was a huge fan of Parmenides and Heraclitus. So Plato at one point, no, realized that the philosophy of Parmenides and Heraclitus, though different from each other, Plato realized that they can actually be reconciled. So Plato realized that both are correct. In other words, parang sinabi ni Plato na Parmenides, tama ka. And Heraclitus, tama ka din. That's why you don't have to argue with one another because pareho kayong tama. The only problem is that each one of you is describing a different reality. So it was Plato who introduced the notion of dual reality. No? There are two kinds of reality in this world, no? In this universe. So Plato introduced the notion of dualism. There is two nature of reality, which is, for Plato, tinawag niya itong world of senses and the world of ideas. So first there is the one reality is the sensible world, the world that we can experience, the world that we can touch, we can smell, that which we can experience with our five senses. That refers to the sensible world. On the other hand, there is the intelligible world, which refers to the world of ideas. And so there are two realities, the sensible world and the intelligible world. Yan si Plato. But if we ask Plato, which comes first? Is it the intelligible, the sensible world? Plato believed that the sensible world is only a duplicate, parang Xerox copy, only a duplicate of the intelligible world. So the intelligible world comes first, then the sensible world follows. No? It comes after the intelligible world. So, paano nangyaring merong dalawang reality? So, Plato believed that everything began with an idea. So, maybe somewhere, if we talk about creation, before there was an actual universe, it already existed in the mind of the creator. So the idea comes first, and then the actual physical object comes after the idea. So for example, another analogy, a carpenter, for example, who created the table or the chair. So before the actual object was being made by the the carpenter, it already existed in the mind. No, the idea comes first. What the carpenter is going to do with this piece of wood. Yan, so mas nauna yung idea bago yung actual object. So in human being, there is also uh, twofold dimension, no? Our physical body, and of course what we understood as the human soul, yung kaluluwa natin, no? The soul existed first, then it it becomes embodied, nagkaroon ng katawan, and then after our after we die, the soul will go back to the intelligible world. So notice that the this notion from Socrates is very much familiar with our current belief, no? For example, in Christianity, it's very similar. Meron din tayong ganyang notion. Okay, so this is Plato. Yan, ito si Plato. So, yan ang kanyang this is the representation or illustration, dahil nga wala silang Instagram noong araw at hindi uso yung wala pa silang gadget na digital camera. So the way they create a portrait is through sculpting. Yan ang ginagawa nila, no? So ito ang illustration ng isang sculptor kung sino si Plato. So, Plato also narrate to us or introduce the story about the allegory of the cave, which is a very interesting reading, no? Wherein in the allegory of the cave, there is a representation of the two worlds, no, that is being described by Plato, no? The intelligible and the sensible world. So, for example, inside a cave, so what if there were prisoners whom from birth are already positioned in that direction, facing towards the wall. And then at the back of the prisoners, there's an opening wherein there is light, no, that allows light to project shadows on the wall. So that, for example, whenever there are people passing by in the opening of the cave, it creates a reflection of shadows on the wall, no? And then the prisoners whom from the very beginning have only seen the shadows, no? They have not witnessed the real world outside of the cave, no? They are only seeing the shadows. So what they understood as reality are the shadows on the wall, but they are unaware of a bigger reality of which the shadows are only projections, no? So this represents the twofold nature of reality according to Plato, that there is an intelligible world and there is a sensible world. And the shadows on the wall represents the world of senses, wherein everything is only temporary, where change is possible. Change for Plato is possible only in the sensible world, referring to the concept of becoming introduced by Heraclitus. But outside the cave, there is a bigger reality, no, that represents the intelligible world according to Plato. So the intelligible world for Plato is the only world wherein permanence is possible, referring to the notion of being by Parmenides. So that's why sinasabi ni Plato na tama ka Heraclitus, tama ka rin Parmenides. But each one of you is describing a totally different reality, because there's a dual nature of reality. Yan ang ano ni Plato. So that's how Plato creatively reconcile the philosophy of Parmenides and Heraclitus. So, no, for example, the idea of a cat, no, idea versus the sensible world, no. The idea for Plato is perfect because it resides in the mind, no. The idea cannot be imperfect, no. The idea is perfect in the mind, because when you think of a cat, for example, it is perfect in the mind. But in the sensible world, um, each and every cat has an imperfection. Ito, walang balahibo. Itong isa naman ay mabaho. Itong isa naman ay walang tail. So, meron silang imperfection. So, in the sensible world, we cannot be perfect, but only in the world of ideas that they are perfect. So, that's the difference. So, as I've said, for human beings, man is an embodied reality, no? Meron siyang uh, twofold nature, no? One reality is the soul, no, which is eternal. It belongs to the intelligible reality. And it separates from the body upon death, no? Because body is subject to decomposition. It will decay, as the person dies, but the soul remained eternal. So, as you can see, that's 400, that's 400 years, no, or 600 years. That means it's 4 centuries ahead of Jesus Christ, no. Wala pa naman si Jesus Christ, because we are talking here of BCE, no, before Christ era. Ay meron ng ganitong thinking si Plato, no. So it's not new pala, no, the Christian picture of reality was actually found already in the philosophy of Plato, no, bago pa man dumating si Jesus. Now we will proceed with Aristotle, no. Maybe the most popular student of Plato is Aristotle. So itong si Aristotle ang pinaka-popular student ni Plato, no? Which Plato came up with his own version of dualist philosophy. So Aristotle agreed with Plato that yes, there is a dual nature of reality, but in a different sense, no. If we consider Plato as an idealist, on the other hand, Aristotle is a realist, no. Realistic si Aristotle, no? So Aristotle came up with his concept of hylomorphism. Hyle, which means matter, morphos means form. So it's called hylomorphism, no? The theory of matter and form. So to explain the hylomorphic theory of Aristotle, he came up with the notion of 4 causes. There are 4 causes according to Aristotle. So what are the 4 causes? Unang-una, there is an efficient cause, no? Or maybe there's a builder, there's an efficient cause. If you speak about the universe, we have a creator of the universe as the efficient cause, no? In this example, here is a sculptor. The sculptor is the efficient cause because he is the maker, no? Then there is also a material cause, meaning the raw material wherein the final product will emerge. So merong block of granite, yan yung kanyang material cause. The formal cause, this one, refers to the idea, no? Kasi yung block of granite, tiningnan lang niya, na-imagine na niya, naisip na niya, ay, pwede ito gawing hugis ng tao, no? That is the formal cause. So, of course, the formal cause for Aristotle could only be possible with, it can only be possible as it is dependent on the material cause. So, in short, Aristotle disagree with Plato that nauuna yung ideas because what you can think of could only be dependent on the actual existing matter. So, hindi pwedeng mauna yung idea, but the idea could always be dependent upon matter, no? And then the final cause is the referring to the product itself, no? Pag na-create na yung monument, and to which purpose is to be displayed, no? For example, to be displayed in the marketplace, in the agora. So there are 4 causes, no? So from here, makita natin, if we are going to compare the dualism between Plato and Aristotle, pareho silang dalawa, no? Naniwala sila sa metaphysical dualism, no? Meaning there is two different realities. For Plato, there is the world of ideas and then the sensible world. Aristotle's version of dualism is that there's a world of matter, referring to the body, no? And then the other reality is the world of forms. For ano, for Aristotle, you cannot separate form and matter, no? It's impossible to have a formless matter and a matterless form. Matter and form always go together. As Aristotle believed it, no? Hindi pwedeng magkahiwalay, no? So what is the implication of this? Aristotle might not believe in the eternity of the human soul, no? Kasi pag namatay yung body, Aristotle would think that the soul also dies with the body. Kasi wala nang form, no? Matter and form always go together. So, unlike the Platonic understanding that when the body dies, the soul would go back to the intelligible world. But for Aristotle, once the body dies, the soul dies with the body. And so that's the difference between the two philosophers, Plato and Aristotle. And also, I think that's the outdoor slide. So yan ang transition that we will say that when we discuss the moral philosophy of Aristotle, the nature of ethics in the point of view of Aristotle is something that is very much worldly. Baga makamundo ba ang kanyang concept of ethics, no? The notion of virtue, no? What is a virtuous man according to Aristotle? Somebody who has an excellent character that is being shown by the person himself, no? Meron kang character, no? Image, something of a portrait, a personal portrait of human character. So, yan ang pagkakaiba ng, kasi si Aristotle, you will realize later on, parang ang kanyang virtue ethics is going inwards towards the self, no? Ang nurture mo is your own image, building your own character. Kailangan mo maging mahusay, and there should be balance of personality, no? As to be shown in the notion of virtue of the mean. This one very interesting reading. I hope by now lahat nung sinabi ko, actually you can find it in the hindi ko pa nabigay sa inyo, pero I will be sending to you yung chapter 2, no, of our reading, no, on Aristotle. Mayroong concept of balance of personality, no? Yung opposite extremes, tapos you have to choose the virtue of the mean. Mean is yung at the middle, no? Balance at the center. So you have to balance your personality, your character, for the sake of the mean, the virtue of the mean. Yan yung ni Aristotle, ang kanyang ethical philosophy. So makita natin may pinag-ugatan yan kung bakit ganyan ang very Roman ba, kumbaga when they think of human excellence, something that is being imbibed with the self. Kasi nga realistic nga siya nga pagkatao, hindi siya kagaya ni Plato na the true reality for Plato is the soul, no? That's why the Christian understanding of reality uh, is very much fitting or suitable to Plato's philosophy, no? Kasi yung soul ang ino-nurture mo, kasi ito yung the true reality. But on the other hand, Aristotle was saying that the soul is nothing without the body, so you have to nurture the body first before you can value your soul. So that's why the ethics of Aristotle, you will see later that it's about how to create a personal portrait of the self, no? How to become good, ganyan. You always need to choose virtue of the mean. So merong parang calculator or there's a parameter, no, or measurement between two opposites, no? Extreme opposites of lack and excess. Pag sumobra, mali, no? Pagka lacking, mali rin. So you have to stay in balance. Virtue of the mean. So at least ang maganda dito, we were able to build the foundation ba of these ideas. Because as you will see, ang idea pala ay hindi yung kusa na lang biglang dumating na ganyan. You will say that it involved a certain period, no, of cultural influence and civilization. And yung mga naisip natin is founded on the previous thoughts of of previous philosophers. So, kumbaga, what I'm saying is si Aristotle ay hindi magiging Aristotle kung hindi siya nakatayo sa balikat ni Plato, no? So, doon sa philosophy ni Plato, doon siya nagsimula, no? Doon siya nag-philosophize. But who is Plato? Plato is nothing without the philosophy of Parmenides and Heraclitus. So, it evolved, no? From the earliest thoughts of the pre-Socratic philosophers, na-improve, no? Di-develop ni Socrates, ni Plato, and then it arrived now in Aristotle. Then you will see later on that it also evolved in the medieval period in the philosophy of St. Thomas Aquinas, also with St. Augustine. Development lang yan hanggang sa dumating tayo ng modern period and then also in the contemporary period. So there is a development of ideas. So that's the nature of philosophical inquiry, no? There is development of ideas. Ganyan. Any questions? Were you able to follow me with my discussion? Do you have questions? No? If there are, if you have confusions, you ask them now, because who knows, I think by next week, we will have our learning task already. No? So you ask questions. I think Ralph has something to say. Ralph, Aaron, are you may sabihin ka? Wala. Okay. So kung wala ng questions, Meron. Oh. Oh, yes. Oh, ano natin, lagay natin yung, wait lang ah. I, ano natin, pakita natin ulit yung screen. Yan, ito. So, efficient cause, ito yung creator or maker. No? So, ikaw yung efficient cause kasi ikaw yung gumawa eh. So, ito, in this example, the sculptor, siya yung efficient cause. Siya yung gagawa ng monument. No? But of course, the efficient cause, meron siyang materials to work with. So, meron siyang block of granite or stone. Tapos, the stone will serve as the material, and then the concept of what he's going to do with the stone is the formal cause. The idea would serve as the formal cause. But the emphasis of Aristotle, the idea could not come ahead of the material cause. Unlike si Plato kasi dapat mauna ang ang formal cause, then bago magkaroon ng material reality. But for Aristotle, sabay ito sila. Hindi ka magkapag-isip ng form without the prior existence of matter. And then the final object is the final cause. So compared to the reality of creation, no, the dogma of creation, the efficient cause pertains to the supreme being, God. So God is the efficient cause wherein the universe is the product. So yung efficient cause ay siya yung pinaka-important diyan. Kasi siya yung maker or creator. Sana yun. So what is your question? Oo. So yun yung efficient cause, siya yung siyang pinaka among the four causes, yan ang pinaka una efficient cause, no? At dahil nga itong si Aristotle ay realist kung mag-isip, so ang kanyang example din ay very much earthly, no? Earthly ang kanyang example. Hindi yung Pero it does not mean that Aristotle does not believe in creation, no? Of course, Aristotle, I think, is also a believer of a supreme being. May God din tong si Aristotle. Pero yung kanyang understanding of dualism, meron siyang kanyang sariling explanation, no? Hindi siya naniniwala doon sa kay Plato na yung the physical reality or the sensible reality is a duplicate of the intelligible world. For Aristotle, in Aristotle's mind, the intelligible and the sensible world, although they are two different nature of reality, but they could not exist apart from each other. Hindi pwedeng magkahiwalay. Na halimbawa, yung soul, nung namatay yung katawan, ang soul ay pupunta sa langit. For Aristotle, it could not happen. Kasi, anong pupunta sa langit kung wala ng, you cannot have form without matter. You cannot, like for example, you cannot describe a form that has no material element. Anong itsura ng soul kung walang material element? Parang ganun ang argument ba? Kung bagawin nyo, yes, let us say for example, when you die, no? Then your soul, your spirit will go to heaven. But how does it look like, no? How do we tell that this soul, this particular soul, is the soul of this person? Anong mariretain? The memory, the experience, the emotions? Anong mariretain, no? When the soul goes to the intelligible world? What is the nature of the soul wherein it can go to a different reality without, kumbaga, yun nga, in Aristotle's mind, the soul cannot be detached from the body. Once you, when the body dies, the soul dies with the body. So, parang ganyan ang understanding ni Aristotle sa Greek philosophy. That's why yung kanyang ethics is not about you have to do good so that your soul will be rewarded in a Christian sense, but that do good on earth so that later the reward will be given in another reality, in heaven for example. But in the Aristotelian, it makes no sense to think of an eternal reward, because when you die, the soul also dies with the body. So you have to focus only with the um, what is concrete and physical reality, no? That you exist in this world, and then you have to focus only upon that reality, that you exist in this world, rather than to think of maybe an after world. Kumbaga, kung saan yung mas sigurado, doon ka muna. Ganun ang ni Aristotle yan. Take ni Aristotle. So in that's why yung niya, the virtue ethics of Aristotle ay very much attuned to yung to develop a human character, rather than talking of spiritual reward that is apart from the body. Hindi ganyan ang ni Aristotle, ang kanyang ethics, as we will see later. Okay, thank you for clarification. Anything else? So, kung wala na, tawagin ko ulit yung iba, no? Si Nina Gabriel. Nandiyan. Nandiyan si Nina. So, kanino ulit nanggaling yung tanong natin? Sino yung naghumingi ng clarification? Ikaw, sino ba yun? Ikaw ba yun, Carl? Si Carl pala. So, present si Natalie. Si Alfonso Miguel. Yan. Rovic. Yan ba si Rovic? Nandyan. Guys, ano ba yun? Full screen. Okay guys, final ano si si Miguel Antonio, no? Oo, na ano ko na, sulat ko na yun. Miguel. Okay, so guys, it's time to have our ano to open your to turn on the camera for the screenshot before we adjourn this online meeting. Can you please open the turn on the camera para kuha na natin ang screenshot kasi kumukuha kami ng screenshot kasi hinihingi sa amin yung sa requirement for our attendance na may nagklase tayo, no, and then andyan yung saglit lang iba pabukas lang no camera. So okay na to. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Alright. So, pwede na yon. Pwede na. So, any other concern? So, kung wala na, yun lang naman, no. Try to look at the readings. Then, kung merong mga hindi nyo nakuha, na gets, you, ano na lang, on your own, you can browse in the internet, tanong-tanong kayo ng mga concepts. Then, you can freely communicate to me through email. And I will try to respond immediately. As soon as possible, I will respond to your queries over the email. Okay? So, thank you so much for your time today. Let us adjourn this online class. Thank you so much. God bless. Okay, bye. Oh. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Angelo. In a few minutes. Do 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 do. Na naman. Good afternoon, Daniel. Jasper. So while waiting for others, I'll start marking your attendance. Carl Emmanuel, uh, Michaela Joy, Rainiel, Jillian May, nandiyan, no? I'll start marking the attendance para tuloy-tuloy na mamaya. Natasha, Catherine, so good afternoon. Let me have a ano, your attendance who is present present in today's online session. Micaela Joy, say present. Ah, thank you. Marilyn Ann, Kenley Joy, Kenley, oo, sige. John Edison, Joshua Calvin, Mariel Christine, uh, Atasha, Tasha Nicole, thank you. Megan, Crystal, Carrie Gabriel, Carrie Gabriel, Jarmilia Laika, Kathleen Adrian, Kathleen, Aquilino Gabriel, Aquilino, Rainel Jasper, Aaron Joshua, nandiyan no? Ano lang siguro ang net. Aaron, Sydney, Daniel, present. Raymond Jose, Raymond, present. Renz Ian, Sydney, Renz Ian, Justin Marcelo, Justin, andyan. Carl, andyan si Carl, no? Carl, thank you. Alice, ha? Carl Emmanuel, oh. Andyan si Carl Emmanuel. Alyssa Beatriz, Alyssa, Francesca Lorraine, Victor Alec, Ethan Derek, present. Jose Larry, Maria Carmela Sofia, present. Maria Regina, present. Karil Nadine, Karil, present. Nicole Van, present. Catherine, Janelle Elise, present. Carl Joshua, present. Matthew, present. Alexander, present. Jillian May, present. Renz Ian, present. Sino pa yung iba? John Edison. Ito yata yung humihingi ng code sa akin eh. John Edison. Si Joshua Calvin. Kerry Gabriel, present. Aquilino Gabriel, Alyssa Beatriz, Francesca Lorraine, Victor Alec, so hindi siya dito, no? Okay. Sige. Bigyan ko na lang ng code si Catherine. Okay na to. Mamaya tawagin natin yung attendance ulit mamaya. Okay, so how are you? Anong ganap? Right, so today's class is a continuation of our previous discussion on pre-Socratic philosophy. Last time we discussed Thales, Today we're going to talk about two pre-Socratic philosophers, Parmenides and Heraclitus. And then we're going to uh, discuss Plato, no? And we will see the relationship, no, between the the philosophy of Parmenides and Heraclitus in the philosophy of Plato, no. And then from Plato we will also see the philosophy of Aristotle. And from the philosophy of Aristotle, we are going to see the background, no, of what is the kind of philosophy that Aristotle have that could influence her moral philosophy, no, particularly the concept of virtue ethics as found in the works of Aristotle. So we will see here the development of ideas, no, or concepts and thoughts that has originated or has begun in the pre-Socratic period among pre-Socratic philosophers, which evolved in the philosophy of Plato and in the philosophy of Aristotle. So, tingnan natin yung connection. So, nandiyan si Catherine. Okay. Okay, thank you, Catherine. Now, yan, so, in Parmenides and Heraclitus, they are the proponent of philosophical, they're the first proponent of philosophical terms that is often um, that you often hear in philosophy, the concept of being and becoming. So these are philosophical terms, and we will try to look at what does it mean in the philosophical context, no, these terms being and becoming. What is being, what is becoming in its philosophical context, no? So the proponent of these notions of being and becoming is Parmenides and Heraclitus. So it was Parmenides who introduced the notion of being. What is being? And then on the other hand, Heraclitus introduced the notion of becoming. So what is being and what is becoming? We will start with Heraclitus. No? Heraclitus was popular of the statement which he wrote in one of his um, text, no, in the fragments that we can find in the the works of Heraclitus. May sinabi si Heraclitus, sabi niya, you cannot step twice on the same river, or you cannot step in the same river twice. Hindi ka pwedeng umapak sa parehong ilog ng dalawang beses. At bakit naman hindi? No? So, yun ang Heraclitus was popular of that statement. No? What does he meant by that statement? If there's anyone here who could provide me an explanation of that very simple statement. You cannot step twice on the same river. What does he meant by you cannot step twice on the same river? So yan ang ni sabi ni Tano. Yan din ang sabi ni Carey, no? Because of constant change. It's no longer the same water. No, tama. That's right, no, that's right. So, itong that very simple statement signifies the notion of ito yung concept becoming. Concept of becoming. In other words, the notion of change. Because in the world, in our surrounding, no, the world outside, no, is a world of change. No? You can see a lot of change around you, no. Even our own self, no, is also subject to change. We undergo a certain process of change from infancy to teenage, young adult. There is a process, no, and even plants, animals undergo a certain change, no. For plants, for example, it started as seeds, then they become seedlings, then yeah, nagkaroon ng there's a constant change of reality, no. So yung statement na yun about the river, parang ano lang yun, a symbolic um, statement about the reality of change. There's always change, no? So people change. Oo, lalim talaga, gano'n ang ni itong si Heraclitus. Oh, no, so yan ang ni Heraclitus. It was Heraclitus who introduced the concept of change. So, on the other hand, actually, merong may a contemporary of Parmenides um, disagreed with Heraclitus, no. A contemporary of Heraclitus does not agree in the notion of change. So why? Itong si Parmenides, uh, who was it is Parmenides who became the proponent of the notion of being. Being. So what is being? So for Parmenides, the reality of existence is what he called, what he referred to as being. So anything that exists is called being, reality of beings. The being of this laptop, human being, or anything for that matter, anything that exists is called being. No? But the totality of all beings is often written in philosophy with a capital letter B. So being refers to everything that exists. No, the totality of existence is called being. So maybe the entire universe, no, and anything there is part of the notion of being, no, capital B. So for according to Parmenides, he had this statement that being is one. So there's only one reality, and that is being. And Parmenides is also um, said that whatever is, and whatever is not is not. So ano ba talaga ang kanyang pagkaintindi ng salitang being? So why does Parmenides could not agree with Heraclitus and could not accept the reality of change? Because Parmenides has a different understanding or a different criteria of the phenomenon called change. Para sa kanya, Parmenides' definition of change refers to the total annihilation of objects, or total annihilation of being. In other words, for example, this book, uh, for us to say that change occur in this book is that this book must suddenly disappear without any trace, biglang maglaho. Yan ang kanyang definition of change, no? Total annihilation, no? In other words, from the concept of being that suddenly becomes nothing, which is for Parmenides, it is impossible. So for Parmenides, change is impossible, and what we come to understand as change is only a form of illusion, or simply a transformation of one one form to another, no? Transformation. Nagpalit lang ng anyo, hindi yan walang change, no? Hindi naglaho, no? For example, even if you are going to burn this book, what you will have are the ashes, the ash. So the book disappeared, but it only transformed into ashes. It does not totally disappear. Even if you are going to put the ashes into water, it will only discolor the water, no? It only um, sumali lang siya doon sa water, no? Na-contaminate niya yung water, pero hindi nawala yung ash. So change is impossible for Parmenides, no? So what is the implication of this notion? Kasi for Parmenides, he introduced the notion of permanence. Being is one. Being is always there, no? It has no end, because you cannot make being to become nothing. It's impossible. And also, it's impossible from being to appear out of nothing. No, you cannot have nothing at the beginning, and then all of the sudden, there is something. So, for Parmenides, it's hard to believe, no, that being could change to nothing, or nothing could change to being, or from nothing to something, or from something to nothing. It's impossible for Parmenides. So, sa kanya, the notion of permanence, whatever is. Whatever is not. So, change is impossible for Parmenides. He could not accept the notion of change according to Heraclitus. So, yan ang kanyang point of opposition, or contradiction to the concept of becoming in Heraclitus. So, dalawang magkaibang teorya that can hardly be reconciled, no? Tama. May point din si Heraclitus, no? There is change in the world, no? And then iba rin yung ni Parmenides, no? That change is only an illusion. But it's impossible. I hope nakuha niyo yung yung point ni Parmenides. Medyo malalim mag-isip si Parmenides. Sa kanya, hindi niya tinatanggap yung change. May sasabihin. Sino yung nagbukas ng microphone? Okay. And so another philosopher, no, succeeding philosopher, no, in the person of Plato, pareho niyang pareho siyang tagahanga ni Parmenides and Heraclitus, no? Itong si Plato, no. So to the point of saying that tama si Heraclitus, no, tama rin si Parmenides. So kung gusto niyang sabihin kay Parmenides at Heraclitus, actually pareho kayong tama, no. The only problem that nakita ni Plato is that magkaibang mundo yung pinag-usapan nyo, no? Because Plato now introduced the concept of dualism, meaning there is a dual nature of reality. Merong dalawang uri ng realidad, no? Una, may tinatawag na sensible reality or the world of senses. So, pakita natin yung ating PowerPoint. Ito si Plato. So, Plato introduced the notion of the notion of dualism. There is dual nature of reality, the intelligible world on one hand, and then on the other hand is the sensible world. So, kaya sinasabi ni Plato na Heraclitus, yung sinasabi mong world of becoming or the world of change, tama yun, Heraclitus, but you are only describing the sensible reality. So what is the sensible reality? It refers to the world of senses, no? The world that we can experience, the world that we can experience with our five senses, the world that we can touch, we can see, we can smell, no? All of the world, all that we can experience pertains to the world of sensible reality. Then on the other hand, Plato was saying that there is no change, or in other words, there is permanence in the world. According to Parmenides, and Plato would say that, tama ka, Parmenides, but what you are describing is the intelligible world wherein there is permanence. So there is two worlds according to Plato. So human being, for example, there is a dual nature of human being also, no? For Plato, no, human beings, no, is an embodied reality. Man is an embodied soul, nagkatawang kaluluwa, no? So may kaluluwa at the katawan, that is dualism, no? So our body belongs to the sensible world. Ito yung mahahawakan, it is imperfect dahil ito ay subject for death, decay, and decomposition. Pag namatay tayo, ano ang ating katawan, magdi-decompose. But the soul will become part of the intelligible world. So hindi namamatay ang soul in the perspective of Plato. So the soul belongs to the intelligible world, no? It's perfect. So halimbawa, itong ideal world or the world of ideas, in this example we have a cat. The idea of a cat resides in the mind of a person. So since it is an idea, the idea is perfect in the mind. The idea of a cat is perfect in the mind. While in the sensible world, each and every individual cat is imperfect, no? So yung isang aso ay natanggal ay isang pusa ay natanggal yung kanyang ah, yung balat, natuklap yung kanyang balat. Yung isa naman ay may sugat, no? Yung isa ay mabaho, yung isa ay wala na siyang tail. So the cat in the sensible world is imperfect, while the cat in the mind is perfect according to Plato. And so this dual nature of reality is explained through an allegory, no? So you must be familiar of the allegory of the cave, no? As told by Plato, no? So what is this allegory of the cave? So imagine that there are people, no? In this case, prisoners. There are prisoners inside a cave whom since birth are facing the wall. So the only reality they have known are what is being projected in the walls or shadows of people or actual objects passing by in the opening of the cave. So in the cave, merong sunlight diyan na pumasok. There is light which allows a reflection in the shadow. So if there are people passing by in the opening, it projects a shadow on the wall. So the only reality they have known since birth are the shadows on the wall. This is their true reality, no? Because they have not experienced the actual world outside of the cave. So, in this representation, ito yung description ng dualism ni Plato, no, that eh, the shadows in the wall is comparable to the world of senses, no, which are merely reflections or duplicate of the intelligible world, no. So kung tanungin natin si Plato, alin ang which comes first, no? Ano ang nauna? Ang intelligible world ba or sensible world? Plato would say that nauna yung intelligible world, no? The ideas came first, and then the sensible world is a duplicate of the intelligible world. Parang Xerox copy. So, like the shadows in the wall, ito ay Xerox lang ng actual objects outside of the cave. This is the true reality. The intelligible world is the one which is outside the cave. No? So when we say it is an allegory, parang a story to be able to explain, no, the concept of dualism. No? Ang reality na alam natin is the sensible world, which is the shadows. Pero hindi natin alam, meron pang intelligible world, which is the world of ideas. So the cave is only used as a representation of the concept of dualism. Yan. So yan ang ano ni Plato, no? Plato's dualism, which is, as you will see, hindi naman na iba sa kung anong pagkaintindi natin, halimbawa, no, of in our Christian belief. Ganun din naman we believe in a dual nature of reality, no, that we have a physical body, and then when we die, our soul will return to the creator, no. So ganun din na as early as 5 centuries before Christ, meron nang na-develop na ganitong notion, no? Si Plato, which is contrary also to the belief of the ancient Greeks. No? Hindi as you will see that Greek philosophy is uh, polytheism. Marami silang gods and goddesses. But the concept of itong dualism ni Plato, no, that there's only one creator, is something new for the Greeks. No? Bago yan, no? Bago yan for the Greeks kasi they have a different tradition. And then Aristotle also has his own version of dualism. So si Aristotle was a student of Plato, and he came up with his own notion of the concept of dualism of reality. So this is Aristotle. So yan ang kanyang itsura, no, according to the sculptor, no. So wala silang Instagram nung araw, hindi sila nakapag-selfie. So it is the sculptor who will create the image, no. So kaya dito mga bato ang mga mukha nila, no, yung mga during the ancient times. Yan. So what is the notion of dualism in Aristotle's philosophy? Mayroon din siyang sariling notion of dualism in reality. So to be able to describe his own version of dualism, Aristotle came up with this concept of hylomorphism. Hylo comes from the term hyle, which means matter, and then morphos referring to the form. So hylomorphism is the theory of matter and form, in which Aristotle argued that matter and form goes together, no? Hand in hand. They cannot go in separate ways because they come together. To be able to explain and describe that, he came up with the concept of the four causes. According to Aristotle, there are four causes. First one is the efficient cause. So in this example, there is a sculptor, no, which is the efficient cause. In other words, he is the maker, he is the creator, he is the builder, no, of this soon to emerge monument. No? Yan, so the another aside from efficient cause, there is a material cause, referring to this block of granite in which a monument will soon emerge out of this block of granite. But as to what the sculptor is going to do with this granite, there is a concept, no, or an idea on what he's going to do with this granite. But Aristotle argue contrary to Plato, because in Plato, he believed that the idea comes first before to the actual object or before matter. No? But Aristotle argued that the formal cause could not come ahead of the material object. They come together as one. You could not come up with an idea of what you're going to do with this granite if there is no material in the first place to work with. Dapat makita mo muna na yung material kung anong gusto mong gawin before you can come up with an idea, because you start with an idea but when you look at the material, hindi pala siya pwede dito. It does not make sense for Aristotle. So you could not think of a formless matter as well as you could not think of a matterless form. They always come together as one. So, ang hirap naman i-imagine o i-describe ang isang form na walang matter. Parang silhouette lang siya. At mahirap ding mag-describe ng isang matter na walang form. No? They could not come in separate ways. Kaya Aristotle objects on Plato's notion of the primacy of the idea. Hindi pwedeng mauna yung idea. Sila ay magkasama, no? In the same way that in a person, for example, when the person die, Plato would think that the soul will remain, no? And it will return to the intelligible world. No? Because the soul is eternal. The idea is eternal, no? But only the body will decompose. So that means that in Plato's dualism, when the body dies, the soul will remain. No? But for Aristotle, when the body dies, the soul dies with the body. It does not make sense to think of a soul which does not have a body. No? So, kung siya ay soul, ngunit wala siyang katawan, no? It's hard to describe, it's hard to imagine. So Aristotle could not accept the notion, no, the primacy of idea, no? And for this reason, diyan natin maintindihan yung ethics ni Aristotle later on, that Aristotle is very much realistic in his understanding of ethics, no? Unlike are you still there? Andiyan pa ba ako? Am I still online? Oh. Oh. Baka wala, naputol na pala to, no? Si ano, yung ano, yung si Plato, pagka namatay yung tao, no, nandiyan pa rin, aakyat sa langit yung kanyang kaluluwa, no? But for Aristotle, wala na, wala na rin yung kaluluwa, no, together with the body, no? So Plato and Aristotle, pareho silang dualist, no? Metaphysical dualism, no? There is mind and body. Kasi yung soul and mind in the Greek, isa lang ang salita niyan eh. When what is soul is psyche, and the mind is also psyche. So isa lang yung mind and soul, no? So when the body dies, the mind also dies with the body, or the soul dies with the body. So diyan sila nagkakaiba ni Plato and Aristotle. Na si Aristotle is realistic, no? Referring to the world, no? To the physical world. While Plato is idealistic, no? Or if you like, spiritual, no? Because idealistic, referring to the world of ideas or the intelligible world. So unlike, say for example, yung the Christian notion natin, na halimbawa sabihin natin, no, that you have to do good here in your life on the earth so that you'll be rewarded after, no, in the afterlife you will be rewarded in the heaven. So hindi yan katanggap-tanggap ni Aristotle, kumbaga, because there's no more the reality is no na, the mind dies with the body. So that's why in our effort, in our attempt to understand the ethics of Aristotle later on, yung kanyang concept of virtue ethics, we will see that ito palang itong si Aristotle is very much realistic in his concept of ethics. That's why yung kanyang virtue ethics is directed towards the self, no? Inward. Yung kanyang understanding of virtue ethics. So what is virtue? It should be uh, manifested in the person. So yung virtue ethics is an ethics of character. You need to create a certain image of yourself, no? Or character. You're going to build your character which is personal. So yung ethics ni Aristotle is not outward. It's not something that you do for others, but it is something that you need to develop in yourself. An excellent characteristic, no, or human character. So ganyan ang virtue ethics ni Aristotle, which is related also with the notion of um, virtue of the mean. Yung virtue of the mean is you need to develop a balanced character towards two opposites. No? So in reality, meron kasing different nature of reality. No? Ano ba yung sa in in Aristotle, no? So in Aristotle, yung the virtue of the mean, no? The virtue of the mean is towards two opposites, no? Merong extreme opposites, no? On one side, excess, pag nasubrahan yung gawain mo. The other one is there is lack, pag nagkulang naman, no? So what is a man of virtue of Aristotle is somebody who follows the doctrine of the mean. So, later on, makita natin yung doctrine of the mean, no, na wherein, for example, yung masyado kang matapang, no, that is excess, sumobra ka sa tapang, no, which is for Aristotle, it's not good pag sumobra ka sa tapang, no. And then if you lack a certain courage, ikaw naman ay duwag, it is lack also, no. So you need to act in a balance, no, between the two extremes. So, dapat hindi ka masyadong matapang at hindi ka rin duwag. Dapat you observe yung mean, no, the mean doctrine of the mean, no? At in other words, meron kasing parang parang calculus ba na there's a measurement, wag ka sumobra, wag lumagpas, sa gitna ka lang, no, at the middle, no? Median, no, diba? The virtue of the mean. So the human actions ay parang ginawa nila ng calculus ba, no? Merong measurement diyan, no? Doon lang ang what is considered an act of virtue by Aristotle. So later on makita natin yan. So from there, ma-realize natin na yung ethics ni Aristotle is something that is directed to the self. How to develop a character that is virtuous. Yan, so makita natin diyan, parang pasilip na natin na the philosophy of the ethics of Aristotle ay may pinagmula, no? It developed from the earlier notions of or actually a reaction from the dualism of Plato, and which began in the pre-Socratic philosophers, no, specifically Parmenides and Heraclitus. So yung isang idea ay hindi lang kusa lang biglang naisipan. Actually hindi, because it evolved from a culture, no, na unti-unting nag-develop, no? Paano humantong sa ganyan, no? Paano umabot sa ganito, no? Ay napakalayo at napakalalim ng pinagmulan ng mga ideya na yon throughout history. yan ang pinakita natin yung development ng philosophy from the pre-Socratic towards Aristotle. So Aristotle is still part of the ancient Greek philosophy, no. Yan, so Aristotle, siya yung naging tutor ni Alexander the Great later on. Any questions or clarifications? So, if there are things na hindi malinaw, you can directly communicate to me. You can ask questions. Yan. No? So, we're about to end our online meeting today. So, yung tawagin ko ulit, no? Joshua Calvin, yan ka pa ba? Aquilino Gabriel. Nandiyan si Aquilino. Si Eliza Beatriz, nandiyan din, no? Nandiyan, nag-black out daw sa kanila, no? Francesca Lorraine, nandiyan ba? Francesca Lorraine. Victor Alec. Wala. Nandiyan si Victor Alec pala, sorry. Sino pang di natawag? Si Catherine. Nandiyan, present na yan si Catherine. Mark. You're not on my list yet, Mark, pero dagdag ko na lang dito, no? Baka kaka-enroll mo lang. Oo. Si Francesca Lorraine, wala pa. Sige, I will communicate to Joshua Calvin para ma-transfer siya dun sa isang G-class. Okay, so kung merong mga concerns, you email na lang, no? Then you read the reading materials that I also sent to you. Probably by next week, we will see, no? Maybe I'll give to you the learning task. Una nating learning task, no? Okay, if there are no more concerns, we're going to adjourn this meeting today. Thank you so much for your time, for listening. At this very sarap ikatulog na oras, no? 3 p.m. But wait muna, do not wag muna. Do not go yet because I want you to turn on your camera. Huwag mo nang umalis because I want you to turn on your camera for a screenshot. Bilis lang. Please turn on your camera for the screenshot. Your camera, please. Turn on your camera. Your cam. Turn on your cam. Bilis na para hindi maghintay yung iba. Turn on your cam. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay. So, thank you so much. Yung kasing itong screenshot is part of my attendance kasi ito yung ibibigay namin sa aming attendance. Anyway, so thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you so much. Oh, may pahabol ka pang ganyan, ah. Oh. Nangyari dito. 17, 18. Hello. Mhm.